the bookshop, it's the bookshop, it's the bookshop of Beverly Farms.
Howdy, everybody. It's Sam Fightful, your host of John Updike's Ghost, your favorite little podcast about reading, bookstores, literature, and all things home improvement. And I am here, as always, with the lovely, the talented, and the very much in the bookshop, Hannah Harlow. How are you doing, Hannah?
We are live from the bookshop. I am here in the back of the store. It's a slightly new and improved store. Is that what you were referencing?
Yes, that was the home improvement I was referencing. Last time I spoke with you, you were very concerned that we would not be able to adjust the shelf heights on the new shelves that you had put into the main browsing area of the store. And I believe, if Instagram is to be believed, that you have solved that problem.
I wouldn't say I solved it. I would say I talked Jeff, the handyman, into solving it.
Well, I would say that you were the supervisor of the solving. I think you get plenty of credit. Yes.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah. I think I deserve some credit for assuring you that it would not be a big problem.
You and Amy and my husband and everybody else were like, just move the shelf heights. And I was like, oh, it's going to be messy. It's going to stink. And Jeff was like, I said, Jeff, can you do this? And he said, do I want to do this? No. But can I? Probably.
Oh.
So, yeah. He did it.
The end result is that we have beautiful new shelving in
It looks really good.
Yeah, it looks way better than the stupid table. Especially now, the table is fine, but the, artifice that was the nonfiction tower or whatever that was really needed to go.
A little precarious. The table was too short. There was a tower on top of it of books that fell down on people.
Yeah.
So this is way better. Yeah.
It made them feel guilty with the books falling and whatnot.
Right. No, it's not good. We shouldn't have had that.
Yeah, but now you can peruse our wares without any worry of books falling on your feet, probably.
Correct.
That's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I love it. I really love it in here now.
Well, that's good. You should.
I did before. I love it even more than before.
Your love, which was infinite previously, is now more than infinite.
Correct.
Brilliant. It sounds like the two of us have been reading at a similar pace. I have two books to discuss this episode. That's one book per week or so. How about you?
I also have two.
Ooh,
so
okay.
Why don't you start us off?
All right. So the last time that I was in the shop for our first ever bookshop staff meeting, shout out to Josh Cook, correct? That's his name, Josh? Yeah. Mm-hmm. We used Josh Cooks to inspire a tidy little conversation about bookshoppery. And when I was there, I picked up a number of advanced reading copies. And so this book is Death Valley by Melissa Broder. She's the author of Milk Fed and Pisces. I had never heard of her. I think I've heard of Milk Fed. But I picked this up for two reasons. One, it was called Death Valley, and I like stories about California. It reminded me of the Western book about weed I read earlier this year. And two, it has a blurb from Nana Kwame Adjei on it. And so I don't think I've ever
we love him.
I don't think I've ever seen him be a blurber before. So it's good to see him in the ranks of blurbers. And he told me that this is a journey unlike any you've read before. So,
and was he correct?
I would say that I have read journeys like this before. There's a little magical realism in this one. It's sort of unclear whether it's like a hallucination or magical realism that happened in the universe. It's not very clear, but it's a little bit auto-fiction-y for me. So the story is about a middle-aged woman author whose father is like maybe dying in the hospital regardless. Her husband is like chronically ill and her relationship with him is not great. So she has gone out to the desert to research the I don't know, flora and fauna for her next book, which is going to be set in the desert. So she is staying at a Best Western, which she loves, when she goes out into the desert at the suggestion of the Best Western reception guest person, and discovers a magical cactus that she is able to go inside. Then later, when she tries to go into the magical cactus again, she gets lost in the desert. And I don't think I'm giving anything away because it's in the first person, managed to escape the desert, but it was a tight one.
Okay.
And it's like a treatise on grief, I guess, is what it's supposed to be. Her processing her grief for her father, her grief for her former self, her grief for her impaired husband. It reads a lot like I am going to write a treatise on grief. And, I guess it's trying to be literary, Death Valley. I think it is for middle-aged women who are aspiring writers. They might see themselves in this character, but
okay. I mean, I think of her
Didn't really
as
do much
kind
for
of
me.
a literary darling who people keep telling me I should read her, and I never have. And that book comes out this week, I think.
Yeah, it comes out. No, it just came out September 26th, so it's out.
Oops, sorry, last week.
Yeah, she she writes for the New York Times and Elle.com and New York Magazine, and I don't know. It's I feel like a lot of these literary novels now, they're just all so caught up in that whole like new age therapy language. It's
Yeah.
just a lot of people in their heads. Everybody's got anxiety. Everybody's got 37 diagnosable DSM-5 ailments. I don't know. It's just I read the whole thing. It's
Right. You read the whole thing.
yeah. It's fine. It's a literary
Give it a
novel.
B plus.
Yeah, I am B plus B. It's just like I just feel sometimes things get too meta for me, right? Like there's all
Sure.
kinds of little phrases from the author who is the character, who is speaking in first person, saying things like, now comes the character moving forward, which I'm told is necessary for a novel to be successful today, and it's like, okay,
Oh.
like, do you respect me as a reader at all? Like, I don't know. It just feels like, we're all going through the motions here, are we trying to delight?
Right.
What are we trying? Is the reader involved in this? I don't know.
Okay. I need to pause here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we're going to take a little break.
Pause.
So let
Okay.
me tell you about my next book.
Now that the people have left the shop.
Yes, we had some customers.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you're live from the bookshop.
Live from the bookshop.
So the book was not autofiction. I decided I wanted a book. I wanted kind of a crushable book. And so normally I read ARCs, as you know, like I'm very focused on what's forthcoming because I feel this pressure to like be reading what hasn't come out yet and be able to talk about it when it does come out. There's been a book that's been sitting on the mystery shelf for about a year. And I keep looking at it and thinking, I think I would really love this book. Like it just really spoke to me. And it started bothering me so much that I finally brought it home.
Wow. What book is that?
It's called The Twyford Code by Janice Hallett.
Twyford?
Twyford.
I don't know.
Twyford.
Oh, okay. That doesn't seem like a word. Yeah.
Well, it's in the book, it's the name of a character, Edith Twyford in the book. I read afterwards, it's based on Enid Blyton. So she's a children's book author. She's not actually a character, like we never hear her voice. There's set in contemporary England. There's a guy that's just gotten out of jail and he's living in a hostel and he's just trying to remake his life. And he decides to investigate the disappearance of his English teacher back when he was 14. So he found a children's book on a bus and he brought it in to his English teacher and he was in kind of like a remedial reading class. And she read the book aloud to the kids and they like loved it. And even though the book was quote unquote banned, because the author was supposedly racist and misogynist and all sorts of things, the stories were so highly engaging. The kids just like couldn't get enough. So she kept reading the book to them and then decided to take them on a trip to visit the author's cottage and have like a day in the country.
Aha. That's a thing that happens.
Yeah. And she never made it home from that trip, but the narrator doesn't know what happened to her.
The kids made it home? But
the kids made it home. He has like a vague memory of one of the kids maybe driving the minibus home.
Huh, okay.
Yeah. And then he kind of dropped out of school and got in with a gang. You know, his parents had disappeared. He was being taken care of by his older brother who didn't really care what happened to him, you know.
Yeah.
Eventually went to jail and now he's out. And he's kind of like, she was such a great teacher. What happened to her? And then he gets into this children's book author who he discovers was maybe putting secret messages using a code, the Twyford code, in her books to send secret messages during World War II. And he just discovers this whole community of people who are trying to decipher the code. And what does it lead to? Maybe it leads to treasure.
Treasure?
Yeah, treasure.
I thought maybe it was like a magic thing because
there's no magic.
She made the teacher disappear or there was some kind of... No.
But it's all told.
I've been watching too much Magicians is the problem. I was thinking we were going into Fillory or something maybe. No,
all like, you know, real life seeming.
Gotcha.
But it's all told through audio transcripts. So the book opens with this setup of, "Dear Professor, I'm an inspector. We found a phone belonging to a missing person. And the only thing on this phone were these deleted audio files that we've recovered. And here are the transcripts. And can you read through them and like help us figure out what happened to this missing person?" So the audio transcripts actually take up much more of the book than I was expecting. Like it's 3/4 of the book. So I kept thinking,
like this dude's voice memos, basically?
Yeah, they're voice memos.
Okay.
And like he was recording conversations with the phone in his pocket and stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's most of the book is just reading through these transcripts, which gets a little annoying. And then you eventually get into the rhythm of it and it's fine. But the code stuff and the like mystery of it all is very engaging. And there are lots of twists and turns so that by the end, by the last quarter, the reveals are like very mind tingling, let's say.
Mind tingling?
Yeah. I mean, just like they're like, you know, the more crass way of saying it would be like there are mind fucks happening and like that's very enjoyable. But what's good to me was like that it's a book with like puzzles and wordplay and like that. It all like
what was the puzzle
sometimes
book? You read a puzzle book not that long ago.
I kept thinking it's in the tradition of like Weston game kind of books, and a lot of those are in like the YA. Like I read the Inheritance Games. That's what I was thinking of. The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Barnes, which is sort of a more of a Western
there was
game
one
style.
like that was like the guy was like the puzzle master, and you know he had like gotten hit on the head, and so he was like awesome at puzzles.
Right. Yes, I did read that much more recently.
Yeah.
These books that are novels about puzzles is that there aren't really like the characters are doing all the work, right? Like,
yeah. Well, that was our complaint.
Yeah.
My complaint about the puzzle books, right, is when, you know, there's nothing that I could have done to figure out the puzzle because they're like,
yes,
she noticed that the third notch from the right was a little bit extra indented. And so she, you know, it's like, well, I can't see the thing to know that. So it's just like, you know, total MacGuffin or whatever. Like, I like puzzles are like, oh, it all clicks into place, you know.
Right. This one, you do get to see it because it's all in the words. And so they give you the words of the children's book, right? And since it's a children's book, it's not like here are like 100 paragraphs that you're deciphering. It's like a short little
So you could have figured out the code for yourself.
And then, you're discovering, like, it's like, oh, this is the code the character is discovering. And so then you can see it on the page and do it with the character.
Right. Yeah. That's a
Yeah.
little bit
So
better.
it's more satisfying.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
I kind of read a similar book in that, you figure stuff out as you go. And this goes back to, so I returned my Richard Ford book to the library. And another new release is Higashino's new murder mystery, A Death in Tokyo.
Cool.
Japanese murder mystery. His most recent, or his biggest one, is The Devotion of Suspect X, which is actually a book I did read, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
I don't know this author or these book titles.
I know this author. I give, as you know, Japanese murder mysteries to Dad often so that I can read them. But this guy is on the jacket copy on the back. I mean, I'd heard of him, but on the jacket copy on the back, it says he is the single best-selling, best-known novelist in Japan and, quote, around Asia. So obviously a white American wrote that, I'm assuming. I don't know. Like around Asia.
Around Asia?
No, there's only 10 billion people over there.
Right.
But, you
know,
I'm sure he's just as popular in the Philippines as he is in Saigon. But
sure.
Yeah. Then it's translated by Giles Murray, who was born in the UK and lives in Tokyo and has translated various Japanese works. But it's very, for people who like murder mysteries, I've talked about my Japanese fandom before on this podcast. It's just whatever it is about Japanese culture that is foreign to Western culture shows up in their murder mysteries in just like the formality of everything, right? Like, and I've talked about I don't know if it's the faithfulness of the translation, if the Japanese is just really hard to translate, but they come off like they're always like super stilted, like,
yeah.
There's never any like flower to them at all, which does, remind me of Japanese culture when you're there. Like, especially Japanese men are very, cut and dry or whatever, sort of stereotypically. But, it's just super direct language. And there's definitely times where it just feels like, there's not really an English word for that. Like, I don't know. But they call him a modern day Poirot on the front. And it's kind of like that. There's this guy Kaga, who is the main character. He's been in other of the books, and you follow Kaga around, and he's very thoughtful, and you get a lot of stuff about how sensitive he is, and that's very, in opposition to the brusqueness of his male counterparts. So he's like this, kind of new age contemporary guy. And there's also a lot of cool stuff about Japanese, like, the way that they figure it out is because the guy who got killed was folding 100 paper cranes a month to leave at the specific shrine that you go to and leave cranes at when you're expecting a baby. And what baby? Nobody knows about a baby, and it's just like, that there is no sort of American equivalent for that, it's
right, which I like.
Yeah, no, it's great. That's why I like it too. Yeah, it's like it's super interesting to read a very Western form, like the procedural crime drama. It's like in many ways it's just like an episode of Law and Order, but it's in a non-Western setting where Christianity isn't centered, and and it's, a lot of the stuff, it just doesn't even make sense, right? The central case is that a guy is stabbed downtown Tokyo, and it's like news all over the place. And it's like, well, downtown New York, like 50 people get stabbed a day.
That happens all the time.
Nobody even cares.
This is not news.
Right. So it's just, I don't know.
Did someone get shot? That's not even news.
Right.
We need to kill at least 100 people.
Yeah, but it's like they're literally deploying like the entire police department to figure out, this one guy got stabbed.
Right.
So it's just, I don't know, but it's super enjoyable, very quick read. And I know that many of our listeners and people that come into the shop like the crime procedural speaking of which, we'll be at the
Yeah.
Crime Bake actually in November. So I'm kind of
Yes,
in mode anyway. So
we're in crime mode. But my second book is not a mystery at all.
no.
It is a memoir, and it is called Exit Interview: The Life and Death of My Ambitious Career by Christy Coulter.
Uh-huh.
And this is a career that took place at Amazon.
Yeah. Why are we reading
I
this?
know. Well, I went into it sort of apprehensively, thinking I don't really want to read about Amazon, but I'm also curious, and it seems like it's going to be a takedown because it's the life and death of her ambitious career.
Right. Yeah.
So I was curious, and so I started listening, and I discovered it's really well written.
Mhm.
She is funny. She's very smart. I just liked her writing style. And she talks about how bonkers Amazon is. So at the beginning, I definitely felt like, you chose to work at this evil place. I don't really feel bad for you.
Right. Yeah. Oh, evil place is evil. Weird.
Right. Yeah. Weird. But I kept reading because she eventually starts working at Amazon Publishing.
Mhm.
So she starts out in like just consumer products, mostly like DVDs and music, and like books are under her purview, whatever. But it's a lot about like software development and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Who cares?
Yeah. And I maybe would have like stopped reading, but then she's like, and then I got to APUB. And I was sort of like, oh shit, I don't want to hear this at all, actually. But I just kept going.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then had this moment of like, oh, I worked with these people. Like she's clearly changed names. There were
Right.
definitely people I recognized that she was writing
Yeah.
about under a
you
different
like
name.
not just metaphorical people. You know these actual people.
I actually knew these people.
Wow.
So it was super strange. And I probably met her at some point. I was looking at her picture. I don't really remember. But the story is back in the early 2010s, like let's say 2011, 2012, when Amazon decided to start publishing their own books, they needed a print distributor, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
they obviously can put out an ebook, no problem. But they didn't necessarily want to like find their own printers, and they wanted to be able to distribute outside of the Amazon universe, right? How do you get print books into Barnes and Noble? How do you get them into all the indies? So I had a very enterprising boss at Houghton Mifflin Harcourt. She was actually my boss's boss, and she saw an opportunity. I mean, it was kind of a gross opportunity,
to sleep
sure.
with the enemy. Yeah.
Yeah. But
Saw an
Houghton-
opportunity to garrot my own throat.
yeah. At the same time, Houghton was constantly on the verge of, being sold or going out of business or whatever. And they needed money, and, Amazon had money. So
Yeah.
Houghton was their print distributor. And what that meant was they came to our sales conferences. We heard about the books they were putting out, and my boss, I didn't have to do this, but my boss had to do some of the marketing for the print books.
What?
And it was all.
Houghton Mifflin is somehow doing the marketing for a
for the
book
print.
that Amazon is actually publishing.
Yes. It was all completely data driven. So they had like a formula, and it was
That
like,
is
okay, if we're
something.
printing 5,000 copies, we're spending X amount of marketing dollars on that actual print run. It was all based on the actual print run.
Mhm.
And it was tens of thousands of dollars more than we would spend on a book where we printed 5,000 copies. And so she was just like, and it was just like, just spend the money. Just here's $25,000. Go, and we want print ads. And they would kind of like she would come up with a plan, working with the ad agency or whatever, and say, okay, like for $25,000 is what, I don't know if it was actually that much, but like, this is what you would get. And this is my suggestion for this type of book.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And they would just be like, yeah. So it was, I mean, like, us, it was insane. It was like, you're just throwing so much money, like at these books, which is some sense wonderful, but also it was just completely bonkers.
No, it's not wonderful. Like,
I mean, it's wonderful for those books to get, if you're that author, you're psyched. You're
I guess
actually
you're
getting
happy.
ad dollars.
Yeah, and as your
But it
career
wasn't-
and the entire industry is eroded
But
from
it
its
wasn't
foundations.
like the thoughtful, like dedicated marketing that you could get if you actually had like real people who cared, and it wasn't like a formula and based on like data. Like I just didn't really believe in the process. I don't know that. I think only people at Amazon did. Anyway, that wasn't in the
Yeah.
book, any of that stuff. It
That's
was just
not in
kind
the
of
book.
like,
No.
the woman who wrote the book ran Amazon Crossing, which did all of their literature and translation.
Amazon Crossing.
Yeah. I mean, the best part of like hearing it is like at some point you just like get into the gleefulness of like how terrible it is there.
It
Like,
all
she talks about-
fails and stuff, right? I mean,
it all fails. Yeah.
yeah.
So you watch there. So basically they had a good premise of in the Kindle Select or Kindle whatever program where you self-publish books.
Yeah.
They took those self-published bestsellers and gave them like a bigger platform and made them kind of even bigger bestsellers, like across a bigger audience, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
gave them an imprint and not just now they're no longer self-published. So then other publishers got the same idea, right? Like anybody can see who's
who needs editors, who needs copywriters.
Well, I mean, that was the idea. Like you see the best-selling self-publishers and you actually give them an edit and you give them,
right.
Whatever. But other publishers started to catch on. So Amazon was like, okay, well, we have all the data. We need to be able to identify the books that are going to become self-published bestsellers and pick those out beforehand and like
so that
make
other
those
people don't see them first. Yeah. Mhm.
right. And so they kept trying to like write all these programs to identify future bestsellers.
Yeah.
And like obviously that didn't work.
No, the algorithm can't
like
just
amazing.
figure it out. Well, if it sells 37 copies within the first 29 hours, then it's going to sell an average of 10,000. Yep.
Yeah. So they failed, and that was awesome. I think the weirdest thing to me about this kind of like there's certain memoirs where you're reading it and you're thinking, how do you remember this level of detail? And for this one, this book in particular, it starts out with like, okay, I went for my interview at Amazon. This is all the stuff that was said. And then like I got my job and it's, 2009 or whatever the date is. Like it's a long time ago.
Yeah.
And she's giving like specific, like, I mean, I appreciate it. She goes through her years at Amazon by kind of each year or whatever, focusing on like kind of big events and certain meetings that happened. But I'm like, she must have been taking meticulous notes.
Do you still have your Outlook
time.
calendar available to you or something?
Exactly. I mean, she references at some point like making notes in her moleskin. So I'm like, she must have like 80 moleskins full of like detailed meeting
Maybe
notes.
some people do that. It's funny because I'm kind of sort of working on this memoir with this dude, Eli. And, so that's one of the sort of big conversations we're having is like, what is our pitch for why someone is going to read this memoir, right? And so we think, okay, Portland is hot, right? Like people think Portland is like this top 10 place to live or whatever. We're telling you that it used to be better and like it's on its path to ruin, right? So it's like, everything you don't know about, this glorious
it has
paradise
jumped
or
the
whatever.
shark. Sorry.
Completely. Yeah. It's absurd. It's a Disneyland for adults now. But, so we feel like that's the hook. Why do I want to read this Amazon memoir? Just because I want to hear about how dysfunctional it's a schadenfreude type of thing.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
That's it. I think I clearly have a very particular connection to it, but so I don't know. I don't know how many other people want to read this.
Amazon's just as evil as I thought. Jeff Bezos.
Yeah. Well, I actually think what it is that she is a career woman, right? Who got pretty high in the ranks of a very large corporation in America, where she was one of the few women kind of amongst majority male execs. And so a lot of it is just about how to be a woman in the workplace and how to be an exec and a good manager and how to, be managed badly. How do you deal with that?
Right.
So I do think there are people who will respond to that aspect.
Right. And I also think there's the cautionary tale, and this happened to me, it happened to you, I think, too, is, you're sort of told like this is how you progress in this industry, right? Like you become this, and then you become this, and you become this, and you become this. And no one really mentions like, and you trade away this piece of your soul and that piece of your soul. And of course, yes, you're going to be miserable. We're all miserable. Isn't that hilarious? And when you get to this level of like, oh, I am a person who does international business, right? Like there's a level that you get to. We all stay at the same hotels. We all know how to fly business class. We all have an airlines card. We all have, 4 or 5 suits we can put on or whatever. And the joke is, totally. I missed my kids' cross country meet, and I missed this and I missed that. But hey, that's the grind or whatever, so I can make all this money, blah blah blah. And no one is talking about, oh well, maybe we shouldn't all do this because it's fucking miserable.
Right. No, that's exactly it, and that's totally in the book. I had a moment the Christy comes into Amazon. She's in her first role, and she is dealing with being a manager and like being a manager of people who have been at Amazon for a while, right? And she keeps talking about this one guy who's like a thorn in her side. And she's like, yeah, he's been here for like 10 years. And I think when he first got here, he was like an amazing Amazon employee. But then gradually things at Amazon changed and he's been unwilling to change with it. And you know what? It's just his time. And she has no compunction about letting him go.
Right. Yeah.
And I read that and I felt sick because I was like, I think I was that guy. I think for my last boss, he came in as the new guy and like, we're going in a new direction for this company. And I was that schmuck who'd been there for 17 years and was like, I'm so old school. And like, if I hadn't left when I did, I probably would have been fired. Like, I couldn't change. I couldn't do things his way. And I don't know, I just felt sick about the whole thing reading it. And like, she had no empathy for that guy. I was like,
and it's totally, I think people just assume like, oh, when you're at this level, you just go get another job where you can sell your soul or whatever. Like you're just a baseball player who's been released and, well, maybe you just don't get to be a professional baseball player anymore. But it's like, no, this is like my life and my health insurance.
Right. What am I supposed to do? Did you bring up that baseball player analogy because you wanted to pay your respects to Tim Wakefield? You're giving us a segue.
No, that is a good segue because we don't need to talk anymore about that. We should talk about Tim Wakefield briefly. We've talked in the past about how you published Pedro and Big Papi's books, but given the very sad news that Tim Wakefield has died of brain cancer at the age of 57, which is totally unfair. I just watched him on TV like 2 months ago. It's insane. Tim Wakefield is very much, when I was going to Red Sox games all the time in the late 90s, I saw him pitch all the time. And one of the only signed baseballs I have is a Tim Wakefield 49 signed baseball that you got for me because you published Knuckler, which is his autobiography, although
we can discuss that. I'm sure we've actually already said how bad it is.
Yeah. As much as I love Tim Wakefield, perhaps the worst sports autobiography I've ever read, written in the third person. I blame Tony Maserati, who is the ghostwriter and seems not very coherent when I hear him talk. So not surprising that his choices would be incoherent in the choice of that book. But you got to meet Tim Wakefield, I think, right?
I did. So I worked on the marketing for that book called Knuckler when I was at Houghton. And he did sign a bunch of baseballs for us that we gave away to probably booksellers. I don't know that we were really giving much away on social media back in those days. think it was probably around 2010 that book came out. I'd have to look.
Like that, yeah.
And he was super nice. I didn't meet him. I didn't hang out with him that much. He did a signing at the old New England Mobile Book Fair, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
But it was in Newton, I believe.
Yeah, the place was massive.
Yeah, it was massive. And he showed up for the signing, and I went to the event to help, manage the lines and whatever. So I did get to say hi to him. He was obviously super nice. I mean, I think I watched a video of Tech talking about what an amazing teammate he was and crying. It was very moving. But, you always had the sense that he was kind of a gentle, quiet, lovely person on the team,
Yeah, he seemed to be. He that's the reports everybody gives off or whatever. It's just, he's been around for 29 years. When you're a Red Sox fan, those like Red Sox lifers, they feel a little bit like part of your family because you watch them on TV so much.
Well, it's just also
genuinely shocking when I heard that news.
Yeah, it was shocking. And, we were watching in the 2003, 2004 World Series runs where he was such a key player.
Oh, yeah.
And those were like big years.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for people that grew up or whatever, I was 11 in 86 when the ball went through Buckner's legs. All the 2004, 2007 guys are sort of icons for people of our age. It's terrible. So,
it is terrible.
As much as we will miss Tim Wakefield, we cannot recommend his book. I would not bother reading it. I would watch videos online.
You think that's going to be one that, comes back and hits the bestseller list?
I mean, I would, if it was, Terry Francona also just retired, and I know you did a book with Tito, and his book is amazing. I totally recommend Tito's book. Pedro's book.
His book's awesome. Yeah. And I did get to hang out with him, and he's awesome. Like the nicest person.
But Wakefield's book sucks, so don't get it.
You should go watch some old footage instead.
Go watch videos of him or something. All right, so we don't really have to pimp the Ellen Hildebrand event very much because it's sold out in 2 days.
It is sold out. That was bonkers. I was spent last week processing all those ticket sales.
Sold 250 tickets in 2 days, which is
thank you, everybody.
We have ever done before.
Very exciting.
So clearly there is demand when we sort of, we're on a hot streak right now here, with Andre being such a successful event. Now we sold 250 tickets. So clearly there is some demand for seeing authors speak, and we will figure out some more authors to do other events with. But bummer for you if you did not get a ticket to the event and you really wanted one, but we'll do something cool again soon. So don't feel as though you've missed out forever.
True. All right.
I don't
anything else?
I can't think of anything. I haven't read any other books. Next up on my list for people, I am committed to reading at least 100 pages of this new Kristen Hanna book.
Wow.
So you will get a report on that.
Again, I'm not sure the audience for that one, but I am delighted to hear what you think.
Kristen said that the end of Four Winds actually made her angry. So she is very interested to see what happens with this book. My experience.
Yeah, I totally agree with your way. But I mean, that whole book actually made me angry, but that's neither here nor there for this episode.
All right, so that's something to look forward to.
Great.
All right, so we will see you next time, everybody.
See you next time.